We did it.
Mark, what
Jeez,
is
I'm
up,
sorry.
dude? Wow, boy. You know, they just these rascals in the fucking technology industry want to make these things even more harder than what
No,
they need to be
it's
continually, don't
so
they?
convenient. Yeah.
Fucking assholes, Jesus, dude. Thank you so much once again. Honestly, this is incredible. I appreciate the time and what fun, man. What a fucking wild drop that Youth Attack just put on everybody, dude. Insane.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's something I had to keep secret for a while. And, well, all my friends knew about it, but yeah, I was just sort of tooling away quietly. I just like to do that. I'd rather not talk about it forever. I just put it out. You know what I
Man,
mean? Couple days.
yeah, dude, and like one of the, I mean, absolutely ill things too is like the kind of like magic behind just a spontaneous little thing. The Youth Attack kind of update on the site 10 days out. Hey, New Year's Eve, you might want to stick around. You know, it's like, what if I stick around and then nothing even comes? Like that's also like a move too. Like who knows? It might be like, you know, like a week out. But man, these 25th anniversary box sets, the photo book, the T-shirts, it was insane, man. It was honestly so sick. And I mean, I guess really I wanted to kind of talk about this just as
Yeah.
a whole, and with it being, you know, such a huge thing, and I can only imagine being a huge fucking undertaking. Where did this start as far as the conversation, maybe with the boys, as far as to put out a new release of this, and for the first time in forever, it being on a physical format?
Yeah, in early 2022, I realized like, oh, okay, it's going to be 25 years old. Um, I should probably do a reissue finally. It was something I'd put off forever. I think it's just it was partly due because it was such a huge thing to approach for me, and it had been out of print for so long that it was kind of like, okay, well, if we're gonna put it out again, it should be done well, because the way that it had been out was insufficient. Like the CD is very much a 2000 release. You know, it's very dated, and the sound on it is bad. It doesn't sound good, so I kind of braced myself to think like, okay, I'm just gonna commit to it. And actually, I have like three more updates lined up, but I postponed them to do this to make the anniversary.
Oh,
And the record actually came out in early 1998. So I thought, okay, well, I got the whole year of 2023 to at least get it done. But I spent the whole year working on it still. So by the time October rolled around, I was like, you know, it's kind of lame if it doesn't come out in the anniversary year, if it's late.
yeah, right.
And so I was begging and pleading with the manufacturer to be like, can I just like have one to show, and I'll just put it up on the last day of the year, so at least it counts. It's like the year.
Okay.
So that's kind of what happened.
Man, I mean, was there like a big, you know, like Taylor Swift or something that you were up against as far as for like the you know, like a release to where you're like, come on, man, just set this one, you know, let those ride a little late and give me this one here.
No, it was all my problem. It was all
Okay.
you know, I can lay out records like it's nothing,
Yeah.
but to lay
Yeah.
out a full hardcover coffee table book was a whole undertaking. I mean, I couldn't even I couldn't even tell you. Actually, it was pretty much done last year, but I kept changing it. You know, I kept tinkering it and realizing that it was laid out wrong. So, you know, I can use these programs just fine. So, you know, it was laid out in InDesign. But there are several things about book design that I just didn't really think about, just like margins and text placement, and just going through the text and making sure that it was all correct was like a year. It was like a year of the most boring things that you can think of, like man, of like measuring the spaces between photos and copy editing, stuff that I you know I don't know how to copy edit really. I don't really know. My grammar is not that great, so I had to hire. You know, like, but yeah, all the text is formatted. It's very precise, and I combed through it as much as I could, to the point where like I realized like once this thing is finally in my hands, I'm not going to read it. Like I don't want to know.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to know if there's anything wrong with it. I haven't
If
actually
there's
looked
fuck
at it.
ups, let that be part of the charm. Like, I'm not going back.
I just think I did my best. It got to a point where I couldn't look at it anymore.
Man.
And but I did, you know, I reached a point of like last summer where I was like, okay, I feel good about it. I'm going to start this other project. I'll put this other book out with it. And I kind of know how to do books now. So like, that'll be okay. You know, I figured it out. But that one also took forever. And it was a million edits and a million changes. So it's not a very interesting story. It's just that I just spent the whole year tinkering. You know, I just like worked on it relentlessly. And I would get these proofs from the printer, and I'd be like, oh God, I have to change so many things. And so I would just start over again. And like you're dealing with these gigantic files that you're sending back and forth, and it really was a massive undertaking. I think it was the hardest thing that I've ever done. So it was very satisfying to finally get it in my hands and be like, okay, it looks the way that I wanted. In fact, it looks better than I expected. So, you know, I was stoked on
I mean,
that.
I think what was like wild and what also excited me, along with the fact of like all the stuff that you always have going on with Youth Tech and you know, just your art in general and things, you know, like within, you know, physical platform that you have, was, I mean, the work also that you were doing with Rose Books on top of.
Oh,
So like, how was that working as far as like intertwining between working on this along with having different projects like on the side too? Not to mention like the art that you're putting out throughout the year.
yeah. Well, I never stop. So yeah, I was helping my wife Chelsea work on her
Touche.
press Rose Books, but I don't really do a whole lot for it. You know, I'm just sort of like a background figure. You know,
Oh,
we
okay,
actually
okay.
shipped I think 3,500 orders from our house, and that was insane because we had to load these boxes into our house, stuff the orders, load them into our SUV, then drive them to the post office, and then unload them. And you know, I just thought, oh, I've done this sort of thing before. What's the big deal? But yeah, you get up to like 3,000 of these orders, and you're like, oh my God. Suddenly, I felt really old. Like my back was like in pain. Went up and down these stairs. I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. But yeah. It just in terms of being busy, I'm always just trying to go in different directions and take on as much as I can. So yeah,
Yeah, sure.
we did a lot of recording last year, and we're still working on recordings now for several things. Yeah,
Awesome.
drawing and not as much now, but yeah, freelance jobs for bands as much as I can.
Yeah, dude. You know, and I think it's more or less even seeing like the behind the scenes, you know, some of the things that that Chelsea has like posted too, you know, as far as like you and helping out with, you know, all the orders and packaging and, you know, just different things as far as that. You know, I think these are all things that are very time consuming. So that's where I'm like, holy shit, now you're also putting together a photo book and you're putting together, you know, everything as far as the visuals and the packaging for these box sets that are individually like different and hundreds of, you know, quantities
Yeah.
of each. So you know, I mean, I guess as far as like for this release here, I was wanting to start with like the individual LPs,
Uh-huh.
and you would name them, and you know, just kind of like, you know, the grown-ups aren't my friends, you know, and the purple and red, you know, like splatters, like what was going into as far as what you wanted for each individual one and for colorways, you know, for the releases.
Well, you know, I thought it should be available at least in the original black vinyl, just as it looked, you know, initially, because in that era in '98, people didn't do the kind of color vinyl they do now. So even with the box sets, I wanted to keep the colors like pretty basic. But I thought, well, you know, it is like the current year, so you might as well do some interesting vinyl.
Mm.
But you know, I just asked the band like, what sort of colors would you like to see? And there wasn't a whole lot of thought behind it, other than just like, okay, what haven't I seen then done? Because I mean, it's getting harder because everyone's got like crazy color combos now, and it's become a selling point for a release. Like you would do multiple variants, and that's kind of become the norm. And I don't know how I feel about it, but that's just the way it is, I guess. So I just wanted to kind of play it safe. I didn't know how any of the stuff would do, so I pressed 500 of the LP and just did 3 different colors on it. But they actually all sold in, but all of the vinyl was gone in less than 4 days, which was a huge surprise. Actually, I wasn't expecting that, just because we're dealing with the box set at least was very expensive. It was super expensive to make, and then to sell it and then to ship it. It's like things are out of control price wise now. So I certainly feel for the buyer in that regard of like putting up the money, hoping that this thing arrives in the correct condition, because there's nothing worse than things showing up damaged and not getting what you want or having to wait forever. But I'm doing the best I can. It's going as fast as I can, because each one of these packages is like 9 pounds and it's 15 inches wide. So like it doesn't seem like a big deal until you start seeing like stacks of these things lined up, and you're like, how are these going to fit in the car? I don't even know how I'm going to get these to the post office. I didn't even think about this. So that's what it's been. Like tomorrow morning, I got to go load up the car, and I think I have to do 4 trips tomorrow just to get this stuff in the door. You go to the post office, and they're not excited to see me because it's like so much work for them. It's just like these places run by women. It's like they're not used to picking up like that many packages, I bet. So
Okay.
just to get it in the door, I have to push these giant tubs like up this ramp. And the other day I did it in the rain. I mean, it's insane. I remember just like thinking like, what have I done? Like what have I done? It's funny.
I mean, like,
I just laugh at it, like, because I didn't think about this stuff in advance. I just was like, okay, this is how it's got to be. I'll figure it out. Who cares?
and I mean, I guess all like learning points, all like you give and you get, with anything. I'm sure there's things over the years that you've kind of learned from, but when you end up with like a $9 or a 9 pound package, that's something going out, you're like, all right, maybe next time dial it maybe back a little bit, maybe 4 or 5 pounds of max. But how are you gonna know? I mean, there's so much to it. Like the box sets are each like a 3 vinyl, right? 3 or 4.
3 records and a book.
A
Yeah.
book.
And, obviously I didn't think about this stuff in advance, where initially it was just going to be the record.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this guy, Brian Alft. I think he lives in the Midwest, but he was at one of our shows at the More Than Music Fest in Columbus, and took probably the most definitive, best Charles Bronson photo. It's the one of me jumping over the band with the banner. It's on the book cover. And so we got those photos for it. Initially, it was going to be an inner spread of the gatefold. And I was like, no, that's stupid. I don't want to change the LP layout that much. I want to just kind of keep it as it was.
Okay.
And then I started thinking like, oh, well, I'll just do like a booklet with the record. But, in talking with the band and them telling me like, oh, so-and-so has photos, or you should ask so-and-so. Suddenly I had like 20 people or something that had photos of us that I had never seen before. And I just thought, oh God, this is too many for a booklet.
Yeah.
And like some of these photos were amazing, or at least by like, my estimation, just having never seen them before, to see a photo of yourself from a show you can kind of remember again, kind of brought back to life, and seeing like the clothes you were wearing and like people at the shows. It's really a weird feeling. Like in putting this together, I started to find myself thinking in the terms of like what it was like back in the day with this new clarity that I didn't have. Like I kind of closed the door on it, because I'm always thinking in the present or thinking ahead. I don't tend to look back too much, but it was kind of fun realizing like, oh, we've got access to like every show we played that year. Why don't I just design the book so that it's sequential, chronologically, starting from our first show up until our last show, and see if I could get, as much as I can together, gathered into a book, so that it flows. And I was able to do that. So I think there was only one show where I couldn't get a hold of the flyer. That was a show in Columbus. And there was one show where there was no photos of us in Chicago at this university. And, it was probably one of those things where no one even had a camera. You know what I mean? And for the show that we couldn't find the flyer, I mean, like, I don't even know if there was. It could have just been like a word of mouth. There probably was a flyer, but like no one had any recollection. So even the people that put the show on had no memory of the flyer. But I thought, okay, well, at least there's photos, and
Right.
there is documentation of every show. So I thought that's pretty cool because I've never seen that done, and it was the kind of treatment that you would never give to a band like Charles Bronson. Like you would do it for, like David Bowie, you know,
Mm-hmm.
who has a book of like, what was it, like every song. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
So I just thought, yeah, why don't I just try to do that? It's outrageous actually as an idea for a band that, you know, we didn't really do a whole lot. You know what I mean?
Like, did that turn into, I mean, hundreds of things popping? I mean, you mentioned like 20, people that were kind of, popping up, but as opposed to the final product of the book, are you sorting through just hundreds of pictures that are coming through of, times that you had never even seen?
Well, it wasn't that many, but a lot of people had actually taken photos of us and lost them. I mean, we're talking about 25 years ago,
Yeah,
so
totally.
a lot of people in that time frame, if you're young, you move around and you leave your stuff, or it gets destroyed in a flood or whatever. So there were several people, you know, and it was kind of a shame because, for instance, there was this woman, Wendy, who stood on stage with us at CBGB and took photos of us like right in front of us, and she just couldn't find them. You know, she took them. There's photos of her on the stage with the camera. So there's a bunch of photos like that where it's like things are out there, but at least the shows are documented. So that's how I was starting to look at it. Like, you know, the originals from the album are in the book, except for one. It's the photo of me jumping on the stage that's on the poster. I don't know what happened to the photo. It's like someone could have stolen it. I have no idea. I mean, like I kept everything as tightly together as I could all this time. It was all in these boxes, and yeah. So that, I think that's the one instance of a photo. It sucks. It's that photo because it's such a good photo, but everything else is there.
Man.
So
I, I mean, and so I guess touching, even kind of to go on, as far as like the photos and the prints, you had mentioned earlier the one from Brian. What about the photo from Jeff Klepper? You would
oh
have,
yeah.
where was kind of like the significance as far as for you guys personally and having a print of that?
Oh, well, that photo is used on the Discogs page for
Okay.
Charles
Yeah.
Bronson. And that is circulated around quite a lot just on the internet. And no one ever knew who took it. And Jeff Klepper was this little kid. He was 14 when he took it. But there's other photos in the book of us at an earlier show when he was 13. So he was just a little kid, you know, just
Dang.
going to shows with a big camera. Um, and amazingly, he's super organized still and kept all of his negatives.
Whoa.
So he's still, you know, a working photographer, and was able to send me super high scans, super high res scans of all the photos. And when he was little, I think he gave me or sent them to me, like I think he sent me like 3 prints like in 1998 or something, and so I kept those. But he had all the original negatives, so we were able to get better scans. So even then, it was like we had all of them, and it's the show that he took his initial photos at was just a suburban basement show. You know, totally. I mean, historically important, kind of, but otherwise, kind of a no frills show. It was just like a basement show in a house.
Dang.
So, and then it was all just little kids there. But it was just kind of cool to see like all these things archived, because the way I was looking at the box set is it's like a traveling museum piece, you know, because there's so much of this stuff kind of floating around out there, but to collect it all and put it into one place was important to me, just because I thought, well, it's one thing to do the album reissue, but to treat it from like an archival perspective and just gather it all together so that you can look at it all and have it make sense in this coherent way, I thought would be better.
Man. I mean, and it's awesome too. Like, and even having the story behind, and I think it's kind of fun, to hear. You mentioned this kid being 13, and anybody that's 13 not having a fucking clue on what you're doing, where life is going,
Right.
and I mean to be still like a working photographer and to have all of these like availability to have high scans, like that's pretty fucking sick,
Yeah.
dude.
A lot of
Shout
these
out.
Yeah, this woman, Kim Bay, who took the back cover photo, lives in, I
Okay.
think, kind of a remote area of Florida, like a small town. but she kept all of her negatives, but she didn't have the ability to scan them anymore. And so she, looked up some place on Yelp or whatever and found a guy that could scan them like in his house. So she she went over to some dude's house and sat in his living room. I mean, it was pretty wild. So again, hers were photos that I'd never seen. I'd only seen like a contact sheet that she basically gave me, like, okay, do any of these photos work? And you're talking a contact photo is like that big.
Sure.
So you could kind of look at it and say like, okay, it looks like it'd be a cool photo. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was the one photo that we used, but she had several rolls of film of us, so it was kind of cool to go back and pluck some of those and see them again.
Damn, that's rad.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I mean, in the last print you guys had posted up there, Chris Borth-Larson.
Yeah.
What can you tell us behind behind that picture and maybe the story behind his photo?
Well, first of all, she did a zine called Slug and Lettuce, which was a pretty big zine. It was like a newspaper. And she did a lot of writing in it, and she put a lot of effort into this zine.
Okay.
But she was a big local at ABC No Rio. I think she was in a relationship with one of the guys in Nausea, I think, or maybe it was Roger Murray. I can't remember. But she was like a fixture of the New York hardcore scene, and she's very cool. And we didn't really talk at the time, but I hadn't met her after that. But I remembered that we had a photo in Slug and Lettuce. So that was the one that we sold as print. It was that photo. So that was printed in, I think, late 99 in one of her issues. Okay. And the scan of that is in the book as well. But, I just contacted her and she was like, oh, actually, yeah, I took a lot of photos of you guys. I'll just send them over. And she had the highest quality camera, I think. And she just had this sort of dynamic style where she was like right up front, holding the camera like right in my face as we were playing in a way that most people didn't do in that era. Like if you took band photos, you kind of just stand to the side with your little Instamatic or whatever and push click. But she was like a pro, So she and all of her photos have this really nice grain on them, just super high quality. But that was an important show because it was the first time we played in New York. We drove overnight through a blizzard to get there and nearly died several times. We got in a car wreck on the way. We dodged this huge boulder on the highway that was like the size of a car. There were all these overturned semis, and then we get all the way to New York City and just rear-ended someone like right away. But it all worked out fine. But we show up. We're walking around Manhattan at like 6 a.m. Like no one had slept, but we were just kind of like high on the experience, walking around eating bagels. And it's kind of daunting to think like, oh yeah, we're playing in like, what is it, 13 hours? All this time to kill. Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to walk around? But, we were young enough then where it didn't matter. You didn't really feel a fatigue. So we just kind of like, it was cold that it was in March, and we kind of waited around until we had to go to the venue. But that was a big show because it was with some really big bands at the time that we were all huge fans of. But we knew the guys in Palatka, and I knew of Nate Wilson from Monster X. And Monster X was a huge band, and it was kind of hard to get their records. So they were a bit mysterious. They didn't tour, and there's no photos of them anywhere, so we didn't really know what to anticipate. And we also played with 97A, which Max Ward got me really into 97A because they put out this live 7-inch on the radio, and it was such a killer record. So we got to play the show, and we get to, ABC No Rio, and it's like this condemned building. We didn't really know what to expect, but the show was in the basement, and it was just like exposed ceilings, nails sticking out like rusty pipes. Everything covered in cobwebs. It's super dirty. Everything's covered in graffiti. There's garbage everywhere. It smelled like sewage. And I remember Ebro set up his drums in the corner. He's like, man, there's fucking water dripping on me because the bathroom was like right above it. Well, but yeah, people were just heckling us the whole time, and we just sailed through the set. And I think it's probably one of, if not my favorite shows that we ever played. So, personally, that show, I think was it March 15th or 13th, 97, a big deal for me because it was kind of like our introduction to the East Coast. And I met a bunch of people that I still know today from that show.
Man. Now, I mean, as far as getting a hold of her, as far as getting a hold of Chris, is it social media? Like, is it just contacts through like emails or friends that had emails, getting a hold of some of these people for like the photos? I mean, what was the availability as far as tracking some of these cats that maybe you hadn't seen for X amount of years?
Yeah, I would just reach out to them, either, whatever, either someone would pass their email to me or a phone number. Chris, I think I just asked on Instagram, and she seems very organized. So I think she had everything already cataloged, according to the band name. And she told me like, oh, I've also got oath photos if you want to see those. And I'm like, oh, wow. Damn. So yeah, someone should do a book of her work because she's so important, I think, if you care about that sort of era. But she's still doing it. I think she lives in Virginia now, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, still East Coast, we're still close enough. Within so you're the photo book that was like the collective also included these images. Were there other things that you included as far as from some of like the cats that had reached out to you too, that maybe had to have some sort of a remastering, so to speak, to kind of get a little bit up to quality, or did any of that kind of affect anything?
Oh yeah, I went like above and beyond. So I basically became like a detective. We were able to track down a guy that recorded us, and I hadn't spoken to him since we were in the studio. Shit. And he lives in Massachusetts now, and I think he works for the government. So he had major change in his career. But he was such an awesome guy, and he kept everything. So he still had the ADAT master. So in those days, in early digital recording, it would go on to like a digital audio tape, but it looked like a VHS tape. And he still had it. And he also kept his studio notes. So it was a stack of paper that had like his writings on it for each song, like for his settings and where the mics were placed.
Holy shit, no way.
Just, like super nerd stuff, but I thought it was pretty, interesting and important just from a historical perspective to have this available. I didn't even know it existed. So that's included. And actually he had a duplicate of the ADAT because the first one, I think just over time, like malfunctioned or something. Like when we tried to get the original tape transferred, there were no vocals on it. So fortunately he had a backup and we were able to pull the files off it. So now, like historically speaking, we have it documented where like it's not on antiquated technology anymore. So like in a few years, who knows if you could even be able to do that. So there was a guy in Tennessee who was able to, he had an ADAT player still, that he was able to pull the files off of. So it was just, an 8-track recording. It wasn't like, super high tech or anything, but just the fact that we had that ability made me realize like, oh, well, we could just do, and it's kind of lame when bands remix their classic albums, but all of us in the band didn't really know what we were doing in that time. And it kind of worked out in a way that worked. But like, looking back, I think there was elements about the LP that we would change, like if we could. And I thought, well, it might be interesting to just remix it and have it come with the box set exclusively, So it's just going to be like a secondary thing. It's not like I'm trying to push it that hard, but the fact that, we could do it and people might like it, well, let's just do it. And it seemed appropriate to do that. So we did remix it, and I actually think it sounds better. A lot of people say that about, like when Megadeth remixed Rust in Peace, it sounds like garbage. So I was like hesitant to do something like that, where I was like, oh, it's awesome. And everyone's like, no, it sucks. But I confident that it is actually better. And, you know, in going through the tracks, there were some things that were cut from the record. So there's backing vocals on the first song, and there's one of the other songs has like Jeff playing guitar bends on it, and, you know, some of the members speaking in between songs. So we pulled some of that and stuck it in there. So it is a little bit different. Yeah. But the guitars are better. In those days, I had this weird concept in mind. I think just from listening to Crossed Out, and like you know, you listen to the music and it just sounds like a blowtorch. You know, there's no dynamics. Like nothing is panned. Like you can't really hear any separation. It's just like, you know. So I thought, okay, yeah, when we mix this thing, just have everything panned down the center. You know, it's basically in mono. And we're like, oh, it's brutal. You know, it sounds brutal that way. But in listening back, it's like everything's fighting to be heard. You know, like I didn't understand like audio space or how frequencies work. I had no concept of this whatsoever. So we're like, it's kind of weird that almost all of the record, I think for like except one song, is essentially mixed in mono. So we were able to mix the record in stereo. So the repress is basically in stereo with the guitars panned, and it sounds a lot better. We couldn't do a whole lot to the drums just because how they were mic'd. So you couldn't really do much to the snare and the kick, for example, because I think it was just one snare there.
Damn. I mean, and to have, you know, Will, who, you know, graced this as far as the remastering, right?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
You know, with having, you know, somebody like that too, you know, I think when you mentioned the thing with like Megadeth, you know, there's certain times where you have somebody who's just like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, I got this, smoking a cigarette and ashing all over the board. You know, it's like somebody like, you know, like Will having that in his hands. I mean, like it's going to be the best that it's going to be able to.
That's right. Yeah.
I like
wouldn't let anyone else touch it. You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure.
And again, it was just a thing we did for fun. I don't even know if it'll ever go up on streaming. I don't really want to push it that hard. I want people to just remember the classic, because I'm very hesitant to mess with people's memories of things. You know, like you see this a lot with movies when people go back and recut a movie, and it's like, you know, it's fine when you do that, so long as I have the original. You know.
Yeah, sure.
You know, if you're going to start putting in like CGI into like a 1970s movie, don't mess with my memories, man. I want the original. Like, I want it unvarnished, untainted. Don't fuck with it. I just want it the way that it was. I like it, even if it's messed up.
I was just trying to watch the original Star Wars with my kids the other day, and it's on like Disney or whatever, and they're like the new enhanced ones that they re-released in theater with like the CG, like Jabba the Hutt and shit. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Yeah.
Oh, and there's so much that he tinkered with, like the backgrounds and the light coloring. Fuck. Yeah, it's so crazy. And I mean, I know that's a whole other story. You know, people.
This did not end up like this. I will tell you that.
No, I was very conscious of like trying to keep it as much of a replica as possible. Sure. You know, even down to the label logo, trying to make the lettering match. And you know, it was kind of weird going in and making the second and third record covers, realizing that, you know, I'm making like a new Charles Bronson layout. It felt weird, but it's like I had to kind of enter the mindset of how I would have done it then. I couldn't really overthink it. You know what I mean?
I mean,
because
did you go back like with having like the programs that you've kind of, you know, worked with over the years, like were there things that you kind of went back and stepped back or almost like cut yourself off from in doing those things?
Well, you know, I was able to get the rub off letters in the same font, so it's all, you know, hand done. But the way that photocopiers work then are different than today. But even the copier that I have, which is from 2003, is still different than the one that I used in 1997.
Sure. Okay.
So you get a different quality, so you have to kind of adjust for it. You know, and it's just sort of technical stuff, just on the design end. But yeah, I was very conscious of like just the light and dark contrast on the back cover images matching the original. And you know, actually, the repress is a little bit darker than the original pressing, which, you know, kind of bothers me, but you know, it was as close as I could get it, you know.
Sure.
And I don't have that original art anymore. So it was a trial just recreating it. Like I had to take the record and the poster to a photo lab and have them reshoot it basically on like 3200 pixel cameras. And, just getting the light and dark to match the same, that was hard. And I got it as close as I could, but there's a certain variable that you have to account for once it goes into the hands of the printer, that they're just going to adjust their own settings and you get what you get. So it was kind of out of my hands. But yeah, it was crazy because to get the photo of the poster, the technician at the photo lab he set up like a 10-foot ladder and had to hold the camera over it, and we had to light it in such a way that there was no glare, and we did get it. We did get it, and it was razor sharp. But then you have to go in and you have to take out the page folds, and yeah, it was a lot of work. Yeah.
Damn. Oh shit, dude. That's insane. I mean, like, yeah, I'm just trying to think, because, and I was mentioning like the art aspect too, but then, there's that whole thing as far as going back to it being, the old like copier and kind of, like trying to get into all that. Like, did it kind of unhatch a little bit of, going back into those times of, like that more simple edge? Because like, I feel like that's still there. I don't feel like that's a thing where seeing this is like, oh, Mark, just kind of going back this old way. Like, it still feels, I mean, like fresh, even in the test press, the artwork with that. Did you have a couple of different layouts, or, like, was that something that was like really pretty much like dead set when you initially had the idea for what you wanted to do for the test?
I just thought it'd be funny if Charles Bronson's holding up like a glass of wine. Like, what is this? Yeah.
So dumb.
Which is perfect. I mean, there's a million photos of him you could choose, and I just thought it'd be more funny than him holding a gun on the cover or something. Yeah, I just thought it was funny. It was a little weird making it though, because it's kind of like, okay, well, what would I do that would feel true to the band? It can't be too fancy. It can't be too thought out, because none of that stuff was. I mean, I did put a lot of thought into the original LP layout, but looking back at it, you look at it in Photoshop or whatever, like everything is crooked, nothing lines up. It was just like all organic. And when I made the original art, I just had a ruler and just measured it out and drew lines on a piece of black paper and started cutting and pasting, assuming that, oh, that's the size of the record. But there's all these little adjustments that I would make today to account for some of the spacing. But like, if you look at the original, the photos go right up to the edge. It like barely made it on. So I didn't include bleeds or anything. I didn't think about it. So it's kind of amazing that it turned out the way that it did. But yeah, it's just kind of funny to try and like unlearn my process, where I'm much more precise now, and I'm like very measurement focused, where I can identify 1/32 of an inch just looking at it visually. It was kind of liberating in a way to think like, oh, it kind of doesn't matter how floppy it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a cool thing with something like this. And, like, I feel like that's something that people have kind of been mentioning for a long time, like wanting like a repress or a re-release or something like this. But I feel like there's like that integrity behind it, to where it's not something that's like pressured, or it's not something that's like, oh, like, I'm trying to think of how I'm trying to say it. All in all, honestly, like, I think from everything that had come out, from the attention to detail to such small things, from the book, and you have liner notes in there throughout different things. You have kind of your story of like you getting into hardcore and punk, correct?
In my photo book, there is, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I should have mentioned that. Okay. And
no,
then,
okay.
But then as far as like, so having the 3 shirts, so we're gonna have the record come out. Why not the fuck have some of these shirts here? So the Cal Wolf Pack. What can you tell us about like that having to be? We're gonna have 3 shirts put out. We have to have this one. Was that just kind of like a no-brainer from the start?
Yeah, I didn't want to make new merch. I didn't want to be one of these bands that it's like, ooh, look at this new Charles Bronson
Sure.
design.
A death metal logo.
Right. Well, there's been so many bootlegs over the years of people making their own designs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I would never have made that. It looks stupid.
Yeah.
Shit. I see another one, and they're like, no, it's fucking crap. They made it like yellow lettering or something. It's just like, it's all wrong. Like, they don't get it. But I just thought, let's just stick to what's in the book. I'm not gonna stray from it. Let's just use 3 of the shirts that are shown in the book, and even if they don't sell, whatever, just put them out. So the white shirts that were available, I took them off now, but they're one of them. The I'm John Weifenbach shirt. There was only one of those.
Yeah.
And the other one, I think we sold like 25 of. The CBG shirt. So they're kind of ugly shirts, like the white shirt with the blue ink. I don't feel like anyone would wear that today. But I just wanted to keep it to the way it looked. The same process blue ink. We even had like water-based ink used, just like I did when we screened them. And it's as close to the original as we could get it. It's actually the design's a little bit bigger, just because like. At a modern look, like the prints are bigger than they used to be. They used to get like band shirts, and you get like these tiny,
square,
like a tiny little rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh, that's not going to work. So we'll just enlarge it. But no. Aside from that, it's as close to the original as we can get. So
now the original I'm John Weifenbach was that like something that you had made yourself? As far
yeah,
as
I made it myself. I just made one, and I wore it at one show. But it was like an inside joke. There were many Charles Bronson inside jokes, but one of them was John Weifenbach, who was the singer of Void.
Uh-huh.
He was a kind of mythical figure because he never went on to do anything else. Whereas, like today, people in bands tend to hang around. They go from one band to the next, and they always do something else. Not this guy. I know he's around. He still exists, and people know him. But he got into the movie industry, and I think he worked as like a key grip or something. But he didn't do music after Void broke up in 1984. So and at the time, footage of the band didn't exist, or we didn't have access to it. You couldn't watch like a videotape of Void. There were probably ones circulating, but we didn't know about them. So we just had the photos. We had Band in DC, the book. In every photo of this guy, he looks absolutely insane. And it was kind of satisfying years later, like seeing some of these shows of them playing. And indeed, he was an unhinged maniac. And to me, he was the ultimate frontman. And Void was like the ultimate band. In my mind, they were like such a cult band. They were a band of misfits, really. Like they didn't really like match, So, but the record was, when I first got into hardcore in high school, like at 16 or whatever, when I first heard Void, it was like life defining for me. And their lyrics were different, their art was different, and the logo was so powerful and the name was powerful. It really made you think about like, what are they going for? And it was something other than these topical themes that like bands would, like Youth of Today or something, would sing about. They were much more antisocial. Anyway, John Weifenbach with his short shorts and his like Adidas shirt. I mean, he did not look like a punk. He looked like a guy that would be playing like basketball and like a park or something. You know what I mean? He did not look like a punk. That was very much appealing to me because he wasn't the stereotype. And as a frontman, he was unmatched. I mean, he's vocally insane, and his performances were unhinged. And if you see any of these videos of him playing, he's such a legend. So I made the shirt like invoking that spirit. It's
kind of ultimate salute.
Absolutely, yeah. And to this day, I never saw what he looks like again. Like after the band, he just disappeared. So there's this mythical element that appealed to me, where it's like you get in, you make your mark, and then you get out. So that was very much what Charles Bronson did. We did not linger. We never played a reunion show. We never put out a record that I thought was bad. It's like our last record was definitive, and then we were done. I mean, Floyd did do an unreleased album, but thankfully they never put it out. So,
yeah. Once again, they kind of left it, as as being like that moment. But yeah, I mean, there's something about everything within like this collection, of this record and kind of celebration to where I was like in love with seeing everything too.
Wow.
And even like myself, there was something like right around Christmas that I was supposed to be waiting for sometime. And this is not a slam on my wife whatsoever. I love her. I was waiting around and I was thinking that it was going to be this because I'd been talking about it. And it was like 4 or 5 days after like the records had also, or a couple of days after the records had sold out, the thing shows up and it's not any of this. So I was like, fuck. so you know what I'm saying? I'm scouring the internet and seeing what I can see, but it's awesome. I mean, to see the praise for everything, and I've seen a bunch of people on here that have been mentioning the sound ripping, the vinyl being absolutely beautiful, the packaging. I think that's another cool thing too, to be able to have. Where was like the thought as far as the box sets and having this actual big physical box? Was that always kind of the thought of having like a 3 vinyl set for all of this, or was this kind of like over time you're like, you know what, I want to have the photo album involved in this, I want to have a little bit more with like the full box?
Initially, yeah, it was just going to be the reissue of the record, and it was just going to be kind of a one and done thing, and then it turned into this massive project, and I just thought, okay, well, I guess it's 3 records now. And one of the turning points for the second record was that we had this live recording of us playing in Ohio. Oh. And I knew that a tape of it existed, but no one could find it. So the guy that organized the fest, Mike Thorne, he didn't know what happened to the guy that recorded it. And he was like, yeah, the guy took off. We never heard from him again. He took the master tapes. But we did do some comps that had some of that live material on it, and again, it's live material. It's, it's questionable how important it is. But Ebro's like, I may still have that because he was given a copy of it. Oh, so he had a copy of the cassette. And he's like, well, it might be in my storage unit. And so it took him several weeks actually to unearth it. But he found the one copy that probably is the only copy that exists. And it was unlabeled, nothing written on it, at the bottom of a bin of tapes. So imagine like one of those like plastic Tupperware storage bins just filled with cassettes. And there was just this one. And he's like, holy shit, I think I found it. And it was it. So we were able to pull that. And Will was able to make it sound a little bit better. And we're like, okay, yeah, we got to push forward. I actually had a tape of our rehearsals, and it was interesting to me because aside from the quality not being that good, you can hear us joking around, and it really captures like our camaraderie and our sense of humor. And you hear the songs in development. So many of the songs that are on the album are captured in like their earlier forms on the rehearsals. So if you care about this sort of thing, you can hear sort of banging away. And at the same time, Jeff Jellin, the guitarist, is just like a guitar god. So he could play basically anything. So he would show up to practice and he could, he'd start jamming on like a Sam and Dave song or like a Leonard Skinner song or a Gizm song. So all of that's on the record too. So, I was playing like integrity riffs and just jamming. Like you kind of have to understand the band's sense of humor or whatever, but it was always like making fun of bands that took themselves seriously. So they would spontaneously start playing like some bad metal song, just like the most bad metal riff you can think of. Awesome. Yeah, because we would have these discussions like, how do you write like a good metal song? And Jeff would be like, oh, you just climb up the neck. So like you hear it on the record of just them going It just goes up and up. It's so stupid, but to me it's funny. I don't know.
And you're like, oh yeah, shit, that's true.
Oh, we'd all be just cracking up. But yeah, we did take our writing seriously, but I guess there was some moments of screwing around.
Oh, dude.
But,
I mean, even from like the the live shows and different things. I mean, like you can only imagine that was like the spirit of. So anybody that would be listening back to something like that and be caught off guard, I think it would be just hearing of the band today. Like I don't think it would be something that would catch anybody. Like that rips. I mean, you have those, and then now there's like a full book in the box set as well, right? This isn't the photo book.
Yeah, it's a 200-page photo book. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is the same. This is the same one as like the standalone that was for sale.
Oh, that was a separate thing. That was a soft cover book that I sold. Just my collected photos I have. Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay. So what? I mean, what the book that's involved in the box sets? This was like a hardcover? Am I?
Yeah, and it's only Charles Bronson. And so the other thing that I made of my stuff is just sort of the landscape of the era. It's kind of like all the photos I had, I just put them in a book.
Jeez. Okay.
So it just kind of builds on some context for the time period. At least that's how I saw it. Like, if you weren't around in that time and you have maybe like a vague sense of what it was like, you can you could like look at my book in theory and see like, oh, there was all this other stuff happening, from pop punk to screamo to grindcore, whatever, crust bands. So yeah, I was constantly going to shows then and taking photos, so I was able to capture bands that went on to, I think, be pretty historically important. The fact that I have photos of Teen Generate playing in Chicago is a pretty big deal if you're into that sort of, yeah, and I saw like one of the rip-off Slash shows. So if you were in, garage rock was really big in that time. It was pushed really hard by Maximum Rock and Roll, and these two bands were just the king. And one listen to these records, you just be instantly hooked in that era. I don't think anyone really talks about them anymore outside of the garage scene or whatever, but we were kind of into all of it. So yeah, we were listening to Dystopia, but also going to see the Makers and, buying Suppression records, but still liking FYP, and so like if this doesn't mean anything to you, it's kind of funny because there's huge gaps between these bands.
Right.
All of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. That's so fucking sick. I mean, like, just the overall like reach of this thing, I think, is really cool. Just as far as the visuals from the represses, and I think a real question here, and somebody was just asking, and I don't know if they're being sarcastic, but I thought it was hilarious, is that is there going to be a repress of the deluxe box sets by any chance coming within the next? I don't think this would be a very youth attack thing, to do, is to go ahead and sell these out and then have another set of brand new ones. No, I'm just kidding. I laugh though.
Yeah, from a logistical point of view, it was much bigger of an undertaking than I anticipated.
Dude,
I've to get like several storage units for these pallets, and I live in like a really remote area, and my house isn't like equipped for this sort of thing. I can't just have like 15 pallets unloaded. So yeah, and the storage facility is like half an hour away, and everything has to be hauled out on carts just to get it into my car.
The blood and sweat that literally went into this, and many other things too. I mean, I can't imagine this is the first thing that has gone into such extensive work. Even in the art world. And you haven't been doing anything as far as like art shows or anything like that, right?
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, they kind of turned it into selling prints of the drawings I make instead of getting like 9 drawings together to have an exhibition. And
sure.
I was grateful for the last one I did in 2015, but I felt after that like, yeah, I'll keep working and we'll see where it goes. But I don't know if like gallery shows are really for me. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm that type of artist.
Okay.
You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's different things too. I think a fun thing about your stuff too is one of those things that shows people that you don't have to be, you know, contemporary with shit. You don't have to release something, you know, that sits here and has this overly amazing, you know, like layout. I mean, you can have stuff sometimes as far as like a very simplistic, creepy cover to it, and it be, you know, perfectly enough. Or you can have, you know, like something where it's my guy, you know, just holding up his sign, and you know, it's like, hey, that's going to be pretty fucking iconic.
Yeah,
I think
right.
it adds to the charm for
Thanks.
sure. Dude, I mean, these selling out in a couple of days, these, you know, getting shipped out. I've been seeing a lot of people that have been receiving them, absolutely loving them. Nobody's saying anything about being damaged. So, dude, the
Thank
packaging,
heavens. Yeah.
fuck,
Yeah.
got that down. Was that anything to where, I mean, I saw that it was a little bit of a popcorn situation. You kind of had like a little bit of a handle down on there. You know,
Yeah.
was that well thought out, I take?
Well, you know, you work out a method after you get going. You know, my first day was pretty rough.
Sure.
Uh, you know, and it's hard to anticipate like how it'll go or what you'll need. You know,
Yeah.
so I'm getting these like 30-gallon bags of foam peanuts. These things are like 6 feet tall. I can barely get them through a doorway. Yeah, I just ordered 9 of them.
Holy shit.
Like, damn, you know, I take up a whole storage unit just for these things. You know. But there's no other way, you know, like I could have done custom mailer boxes for the box set, but when you're selling other items, it kind of throws that off. So if you're buying a shirt, it's not going to work if you're paying for these boxes.
Right.
They were so expensive that, you know, it's like, is it okay to charge the buyer $7 just for the damn mailer? It's just, it
Right.
gets ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the prices of everything they just keep going up. You know, just the prices are just outrageous. You know, and you know, I feel for people. And a lot of people questioned like the shipping rates, and you know, $150 for a box set, that's outrageous. It's ridiculous. And you know, I'd be the first to agree, but unfortunately, I want it to exist. So that's what it comes down to, and that's what it is. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, also at the same time, though, you know, you can kind of give a rebuttal as far as like, don't fucking buy it.
Well, that's always my attitude. It's like, you
Get
know,
a record.
you will certainly survive without it. So whether you want it or not is up to you.
Right. I mean, this conversation doesn't need to exist. I mean, like if it's something where it's, you know, I think that's a cool thing to where like even myself and like movie collecting, if I really am kind of on a budget at a time and I want to pick up just a basic Blu-ray or vinyl, I mean, shit, you know, that's the same thing. You can get a special edition of it. You can get a test press, or you can get, I mean, there was standard vinyl as well too. So people that gripe about that shit, it's like, look, man, I mean, for all that came into it and for the amount of like attention to detail, a book having the custom outside, it rips, man.
Well, thanks.
It's absolutely fucking sick.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, some people wanted the book separate, and I'm like, you know, no, sorry. Sorry. You don't know what I've been through. No, but it has to be this way, and it's better if it's exclusive, you know. It would be nice, I think, if everyone that wanted one could get one, but you know, I did my best. I don't know if it needs to be an individual thing. We'll see. Maybe in the future there'll be a softcover edition, but I want the people that took the trouble to invest in this thing and buy it and to have it, to enjoy it for what it is. And that's why I didn't rush to put the music on streaming. I want the people that really care about the band to be able to hear it first. And you know, yeah, I guess there's people out there that like the band but just don't have the money. Well, you know, I don't know what to tell you. If you can't get it, I'm sorry. You know, I can't make everybody happy, but I tried. You know,